Okay.
My panko, we're on.
Oh, we're on.
Thank you. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole for the Town of Smiths Falls. It's Monday, September the 8th. My name is Councillor Jennifer Miller, and I'll be chairing the meeting tonight. We welcome Councillor McGuire virtually this evening. Please pause and reflect as I read the land acknowledgement. On September the 8th, 2025, we acknowledge that the sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. So I'll call the meeting to order at 5:01 p.m. and I'm looking for someone to make a motion. Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that the September 8th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting agenda be approved as circulated. Do we have any disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest or general nature thereof? Seeing no hands. We have an approval of minutes motion moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that the minutes of the July 14th, 2025 and July 21st, 2025 Committee of the Whole meetings be approved as circulated. All in favor? That's carried. So we're lucky to have a delegation this evening about the Neighborhood Concierge Program, and I'd like to welcome Sadie Brule, the Project Coordinator of Climate Network Lanark, to the podium. Welcome, Sadie.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. I'm setting 10 minutes right now. I'm not going to go over, no worries.
All right, that's great.
But yes, thank you very much for having me. And for those of you that have already heard it, feel free to zone out or just enjoy the replay. So yeah, I'm going to talk about Neighborhood Climate Concierge. Thank you. So first, to cover who we are a local environmental not-for-profit. We support grassroots climate action to address the climate crisis. Our main goal is to connect residents to not only experts, but resources to live their best lives, really, and to help them reduce carbon emissions. Our main goal is to have greenhouse gas emissions in the county and Smiths Falls. And we try working along with the county and municipalities to do so. And next slide, please. So what is the Neighborhood Climate Concierge Program? So we want to support not only homeowners, but tenants in this program. We go over everything from energy audits, things such as heat pumps and insulation, solar panels, and much more. We want to build community connection. That is one of the main differences that we have from other programs. We have groups of between 8 and 12 homeowners. We get together in 2-hour sessions for a period of 6 months. The reason for the 6 months, it may sound like it's a really long time, but for any of you that have done home retrofits, you would know, like, they take a long time between connecting with contractors, and we are connecting people with funding programs, and those have a lot of bureaucratic red tape. So it does take some time. So it's really just 2 hours in a month that we take people. Yeah, it's connecting them with experts as well. Next slide, please. So these are the sessions that we do over the 6 months. The first one is funding and financing, as well as carbon emissions. So funding and financing, we go over the many available funding and programs and grants. And carbon emissions is covered by our expert, which you can read under there, Bob Argue, who some of you might know. He's the founder of EcoPerth. He has had work published in the NRCan website. And he goes over things like people's homes, like if they're currently using gas or propane or oil, what would the benefits be to removing those and using, say, a heat pump, and helping them with costs and carbon emission as well. The next session is energy assessments. So We go over exactly what it is, what people can expect, the right questions to ask. Next, and that one is covered by Stephen Mangeron, who is the manager of HomeSol, which is an energy company. The next one is insulation and air sealing. So we cover everything from, if any of you know what chainsaw retrofit is, or the different types of insulation. And that one is covered by Andy Coburn, which also happens to be our an advisor for Clement Network Lanark. He does all of this work pro bono. We're very fortunate to have him. He's part of NAMA Canada, and he was a professor at the Algonquin Perth campus. The next session is on heat pumps, the types of heat pumps, which one people should get and why. That one is covered by the owner of Comfort Pro, which is a company in Carleton Place. So we do try to stay local as much as possible. The next to last one is on house resiliency and emergency preparedness. I'm sure you all experienced the 16 heat waves we had this summer. And apparently we're now Tornado Alley as well. So that's going to continue to happen. We want to make sure that people are comfortable in their homes, not only fleeing from the heat in the summer, but also refuge from the snow and the storms in the winter as well. And the last session is on solar photovoltaics. Everybody thinks that they want them, but they are an investment. So we want to make sure that people understand what they're getting into. Thank you. So the impact. We've had this program for 3 years now. The first 2 years were a pilot. It was incredibly successful. We've been lucky enough to have secured funding from various organizations like the Peter Gildan Foundation, the Perth Community Foundation, and we recently partnered with the county for a 2-year contract alongside Better Homes Lanark program. You would all have the brochure there, but I'm sure you've heard all about it. That one, unfortunately, a lot of it is not applicable to Smiths Falls, but I'm just mentioning it just to bring up the impact that this program has had. So people are really excited about it, even though we're a little bit slow to grow and to get the word out, which leads me to the next slide, please. So currently we do have programs in Almont, which covers all of Mississippi Mills, and Carleton Place, Lanark Highlands, Perth, and Virtual Group, and obviously one in Smiths Falls. Like I mentioned before, the groups are between 8 and 12 homeowners. So we do need a couple of more to get started with Smiths Falls. So we do need help getting the word out. And I'll get into that a little bit in a second. And we really want to be able to connect residents to the multiple rebates and grant programs. They change what it feels like day to day. So while they're here and they're hot, we want to make sure that they get them. Next slide, please. So those are some of the available funding options. People, not only homeowners, and I do want to emphasize because last time that was something that was mentioned. It's not just homeowners, it's tenants that are able to benefit from these programs. So people would be able to, depending on things like income, but they're able to get things like heat pumps or upgraded refrigerators or upgraded freezers and dehumidifiers, and a lot of also help with things like getting a heat pump or getting solar panels or getting insulation for very low cost or for free. There's currently, like, the Greener Homes loan is a 0% interest loan that is a 10-year loan for $40,000. Or the Energy Affordability Program is the one that can get you a free heat pump, for example. Or the Home Renovation Savings Program can get you things, like I said, like insulation or solar panels or batteries for your home. So they're there, but they're not being used, and we want to make sure people use them. Next slide, please. What we would want is to get word out on the program. So either doing that via social media or having us, if there's any events that you think would be beneficial for the community that we can attend to explain this to people, that would be great. And there's the poster that you also have, so maybe we can put that in town hall as well if you see that something feasible, that would be great. And next please. A little bit of a summary of what I just said. We're community-based. We want to connect people to local people. We want to, this is open to everybody. There is a fee of $25 for the entire of the 6 months. That being said, if anyone is unable to pay that, we obviously let that $25 go. It's just for a commitment. And all our information is there on our website. And that's it. The last slide is just some things people have said about our website. I'm sorry, about the program. And that picture is a group in Lanark Highlands for the pilot. That is all. 8 minutes and 38 seconds.
We'll give you your award on the way out. Thanks, Sadie. Appreciate you sharing that information with us. I'll turn to my colleagues to see if anyone has any questions or comments. Councillor McKenna?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks again, Sadie. We've had this presentation at Smith Falls for All Committee, I think it was. And what we were trying to do at that committee is link neighbors and community together that might not know how much is going on. And the committee really embraced this concierge program and would like to support getting the minimum of 12, and there could be more, out and getting it started. So I know my wife and I are signing up for the program. We have a lovely house on Queen Street that runs natural gas. Needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
So if I'm heat pump curious, this is where you'd want to be.
Yes.
Because you could spend all winter doing the research yourself on the internet, and in 6 short meetings, you'll have all your answers that
I
you
hope
want
so.
to
Yes,
go forward.
absolutely. Yeah.
If anybody would like to join me, I'd love our friends in Smith Falls to put their hand up and contact you.
Yeah.
So it'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mayor Panko?
Thanks, Sadie, again. I've been the second time through for it, but it's always very meaningful. And do you have, I can recall, target start date and how frequent the meetings would be? So what type of, would happen over a period of a couple of months or a few months?
Yes, so ideally would like to start this late September. We have currently 5 people on the wait list, so it's not crazy that it gets started. Like I said, we only need a few more people. And yes, so the sessions happen once a month for 2 hours for 6 months. That being said, like they ideally are going to be in person. We understand that over the winter things get a little bit chaotic. Pretty much Christmas starts like middle of November. We know that, so we adjust. We can do virtual sessions as well. Whatever works for the group. Like we really want to change whatever we're doing just for a specific group. We know there's different needs for like people in Smith Falls have different needs than people in Perth and Almond. So we want to make sure that that group feels as comfortable as possible.
And it's a variety of programs which you have the deep insight and expertise on to help connect people to the programs that are available. Is there income tests applied to the programs?
Sorry?
So is there a maximum income?
Oh.
No. So really anybody with any home, even a tenant with a landlord's agreement can participate. And in the end, it means obviously a cost savings in the long run in their energy consumption, as well as obviously the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Can you give me an example of how this maybe a couple of scenarios of how this has been applied in the past? So if you got maybe a participant before who went through the program and went from here to here, do you have those? Yes.
Wasn't the picture before. It doesn't matter. So the participant named Scott. So he has home in Almont. I forget the year of his house because we do take all that information, but it was at least like it's close to 100-year home. It's a farmhouse. So, and he has not only so all the way at the back there. So he's been doing additions to his farmhouse. So he has the main building, which is almost 100 years old, and then he has a separate building, which his wife uses as an art studio. So he was wondering how to get all that done. And, the older the house, unfortunately, the more leaky. So he went through the program thinking the first thing he's going to get done is just put a heat pump in and it'll be warmer, done, get air conditioning in the summer. And what he found out is that he needed definitely a lot more insulation. So he ended up doing insulation in the attic before doing anything. It took him like a year to get the heat pump after that. Just again, based on cost, this can be quite costly even with the grants and funding. But at the end, he did. So whenever you do want to apply for funding or grants, you need to have an energy assessment, which is, like I said, someone goes in your house for a couple of hours and tests how leaky your house is, sees what your fuel is and so on, and then gives you recommendations of what to get done. But something they tell you as well is they give you a grade for your home. And then when you're done with all of your everything you want to retrofit, you get another assessment to see how much you've improved, and that's when you actually get paid back for a lot of the funding programs. So his went, like, the number, I apologize, don't remember, it went down so much just because he did the insulation and then the heat pump. So he was really happy, and the fact that he learned that he could have just gotten a heat pump and be done with it, but he went through this and learned a lot more and got his house to be much more comfortable, much more efficient. And the heat pump would have still cost him more money to run compared to what it's costing him now with the installation. So that's the kind of thing that we want to guide people through. And obviously, like, recommending the funding, and you can stack it with different funding and so on. So want to make sure people can
And
see
much
it.
more comfortable environment now.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Super, thank you.
Good. Okay, Sadie, thank you so much for coming today. And certainly we get a lot of views on our social media on our meetings. And so your word is being spread as we
Fantastic.
speak. Thank you
Good
so
to
much
know.
for being here.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. CAO Morris, do we have director's reports this evening?
Yes, Madam Chair, indeed we do. We have two this evening, starting with Carl Grink.
Thank you.
Good evening, committee. Just providing an update on some of the consultation events we have coming up. Firstly, we have the statutory open house for our new official plan and transportation master plan. That's happening about 48 hours from here at this very location, from 5 to 7 o'clock here at council chambers. It is a drop-in format, so no pre-registration is required. So we will have consultation materials for both the official plan and the transportation master plan, as well as maps. So we'll be focusing, I guess, defocusing on some of the more technical aspects of the plan and more focusing on those 5 key themes that we've been identifying before: transportation, community spaces, sustainability, housing, and environmental sustainability. And we have a series of policies and slides that sort of outline how we're planning on managing these and changing those from what's currently in the new official plan. And ultimately, the question we're going to be asking is, did we get this right on that first draft? So town staff and Dillon staff will be there to discuss and obtain feedback. And feedback, of course, is welcomed after the event at all. So we will be reporting back to council later on with a what we heard report that will sort of summarize the comments we got and seek council's direction on some of these items. So we'll be looking for any public and stakeholder feedback by September 24th. So the draft policy and map are, of course, available on our website under town projects and new official plan. And I encourage anybody who has any questions about the event to please reach out to me. Secondly, our Heritage Conservation District Plan open house will be held next Thursday, September 18th, also from 5 to 7 here in council chambers. Planning staff and Stantec consultants will be in attendance. We'll present the HCD plan, which includes a series of binding policies and suggestion guidelines that apply to the HCD area. So that is the geographic area that was presented to council last December with a few minor tweaks. So the plan also divides the properties into what's called contributing and non-contributing, which means that more robust heritage protection is proposed for the properties that already contain a building that meets the heritage character identified in the plan. And we've been doing some pretty significant outreach for this event as well. We're, in addition to social media, newspaper, and posters, we've done direct mail outs to all property owners within the broader downtown area. The session is also it's also a drop-in. However, we recognize that there might be some particular interest from business owners, many of whom don't live in Smith Falls. We've provided an opportunity for a virtual appointment with the consulting team over Zoom. We did that at the open house back in March, and we did get some uptake and allowed for some pretty helpful conversations back at that time. So if anyone who's watching here wants to participate via Zoom, we'd encourage them to reach out to staff by September 16th so we can book that meeting. And also the draft policy and map are of course available on our website under the town projects section and the HCD. And thirdly, Heritage Symposium. The Municipal Heritage Committee is pleased to announce that our 17th Fall Heritage Symposium under the theme of Old Homes, New Perspectives, Changing the Way We See Residential Heritage, which will shift gears now to look at residential heritage on individual properties. The event will run from 9 to 1 on Saturday, October 18th. And the Saturday's a first for us. We've usually held these on Fridays or Mondays, but hopefully we'll be able to bring out more residents and others who would otherwise be at where the workday isn't as convenient. Symposium would also be held at a new venue, the Masonic Lodge at 46 Russell Street West, and the cost will be $15 with lunch and refreshments included. And certainly I'd like to give a shout out to our MHC Heritage Symposium Subcommittee and Planning Clerk Marie Elmsley for the huge amount of work they've done behind the scenes organizing and developing the planning for the symposium. So that concludes my update this evening.
Thank you, Manager Grunke. Any questions?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you. When is a heritage house considered? Is a 60-year-old house? What kind of heritage are we protecting? Only 150-year-old houses or homes that were built 75 or 50 years ago? Is there a definition?
Through you, Madam Chair, the Heritage Act does not set out a timing specific definition for heritage. And certainly we're seeing some interest even more recently in sort of mid-century modern homes, so long as there's a variety of criteria that apply. So under the Heritage Act, in order to be eligible for designation, there's the property would need to meet several of 9 specific criteria that are set out in the Act, and that includes architectural detailing, associative value, and also its broader location. So there isn't an age period, but there's a number of other features that would go into it. There could be a 100-year-old building that has many heritage features, or no heritage features. There could be a 60-year-old building that does. So these, at least as far as the legislation and the designation of individual properties, it would be very context specific.
Thank you. I think that's it for you. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Carl.
Our next verbal report comes from Director McMahon.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of council. So as council is aware, Public Works has been engaged in some soil sampling, groundwater sampling out at the compost site located at 3514 County Road 43. So this is a historical site that the Sound's used for a number of years for residents to dispose of primarily leaf and yard waste from their yards and or gardens, as well as we facilitate receiving brush out of the site as well. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of history. I'm going to try not to be too long in the tooth. I'll try to keep it to 10 minutes or under this evening. So I'll give you a little bit of history in terms of where we started with sampling and where we're currently at right now. And I just want to note before I get into this that my department, Public Works Department, has been very much engaged with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, referred to as the MECP, throughout this whole process. And they've been great to deal with. However, they've been very active in this file. So back to a little bit of the history. So back on March 7th, 2024, and prior to, we engaged St. Lawrence Testing and Inspection Company, who we've used for a number of different projects around town. They're a geotechnical consulting firm out of Cornwall. So we engaged them to work with the town and work with MECP to develop the testing protocol for the site, as well as any remediation that needed to be done, and what testing looks like in the future. So on March 7th, 2024, St. Lawrence Testing conducted the digging of 5 shallow test pits on site and collected soil samples from those shallow test pits. Samples were tested for petroleum hydrocarbons, referred to as PHCs. You'll hear that acronym throughout my presentation here this evening. So PHCs, so remember that, petroleum hydrocarbons, as well as other metals and inorganics. Soil samples were tested against, and this is important, Ontario Regulation 153/04, particularly Table 7, soil standards for commercial property, which the site is, with coarse, shallow soil and non-potable groundwater. 3 of the 5 locations had exceedances when we tested of cadmium, lead, and zinc. And when we test, we send to an accredited laboratory that St. Lawrence Testing works with to have these soil samples tested against the criteria that we're looking for, based on St. Lawrence Testing's suggestion of what we should be testing for. So 3 of the 5 locations had exceedances of cadmium, lead, and zinc. All other metal concentrations in the 5 sample locations met the Table 7 standards. Inorganic analysis determined that pH, conductivity, and sodium absorption ratio, which would be from the use of road salts, to be within acceptable limits. This information back from the 7th of March, 2024, created a baseline to inform on additional testing and how we should proceed as we kind of work through this exercise. So fast forward to December 12th, 2024. At that time, 10 additional test pits were identified to, again, shallow test pits to be dug and soil samples collected. Again, the samples were collected for lab analysis, tested against PHCs, PAHs, which are polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, that's a handle, metals, and inorganics. Soil samples were tested against the same Ontario regulation that I noted before. However, at this point, we were testing against potable groundwater due to the fact that we're in an intake protection zone. 5 of the 10 soil samples met Table 2 standards for PHCs, metals, inorganics, along with those PAHs, that polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon. 5 of the soil samples contained concentrations of PHCs and or metals and or PAHs that exceeded the Table 2 standards. Again, this will all be kind of pulled together as we get towards the tail end of my verbal report here this evening. So not to alarm you with the fact that we had some exceedances. March 25th, 2025, so this past spring, we felt it prudent, given the fact that that the site's adjacent to an intake protection zone, that we collect some samples during the freshet that we experienced this past spring and we experience every spring. So when we get all the snow melt and the creeks and everything start to fill up with water and the rivers get filled with water, and we've got that surge of flow, if you will. Prior to that, it was very, very difficult to try to identify locations through the creek that meanders through the site, because everything was frozen and things are dry up from the fall and the water just wasn't there to pull samples. So we waited till March. 4 surface water samples were collected from the creek, which runs through the compost site and eventually crosses Highway 43 and makes its way to the Rideau. Samples were tested again for PHCs, dissolved metals, chromium 6, mercury, and PAHs. Don't ask me what chromium 6 is, because I don't know, although we tested for it. Soil samples were tested against the same Ontario regulation. for commercial property with coarse, shallow soil and potable groundwater. Testing results showed no detectable concentrations of PHCs, PAHs, mercury or chromium 6. Concentrations of dissolved metals were found to meet Table 2 groundwater standards as well. And again, just to back up, that's the surface water samples that we took from the creek, right? Fast forward to this past late June 24th, 25th, and then on July 9th. During that time, there was a total of 8 boreholes that were drilled into the ground down to rock refusal. So that would be bedrock. Or sorry, we actually drilled through the bedrock down to, yeah, my apologies, drilled through bedrock to get down to the groundwater, right? That's down below the rock. Soils from drilling and groundwater were tested for PHCs, PAHs, metals, chromium 6, and mercury. Soil and groundwater results were compared to Ontario regulation that I noted before, Table 2 soil standards for commercial property with coarse, shallow soil, and potable groundwater. All groundwater results met the standard for exception of one location, which had an exceedance of dissolved cobalt. The reading for cobalt was 7.3 micrograms per liter, and the standard is 3.8. St. Lawrence Testing, however, they noted in their report that's been submitted to the MECP that in their professional opinion that the cobalt exceedance could be as a result of bedrock leaching into the groundwater and not from the use of the compost site. That's in their professional judgment. They're not saying it is, but they said it very well could be. So that kind of wraps up the testing protocol that we've been engaged in to date. And like I said, we've installed 8 groundwater monitoring wells on site. The results came back. We had that exceedance of cobalt. In St. Lawrence Testing's opinion, we will continue to monitor. We'll pull water samples on an annual basis, send them to the lab for analysis, and we'll forward that information on to the MECP should they want it, which I suspect they will until such time as if down the road, if they're not seeing any exceedances, they may cut it back to every 2 years and so on and so forth. So that's kind of my report. Happy to take any questions should council have any through the chair.
Thank you, Director McMahon. I appreciate the detail in that. Questions, comments? Mayor Pinkham?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Director McMahon, for bringing this back and giving some insight into what's been happening over the last, I guess, several months since this issue first arose over a year ago, I guess. So you've been working with the MECP, I guess you and staff have been, along with St. Lawrence Testing, to ensure, I guess, we're meeting all the regulatory requirements, doing all the testing that's required to ensure that there is the testing needed to ensure that there's no exceedances there that are going to create a risk or a danger. Considering it's in our source water protection zone, our water intake zone, is there any risk to our source water coming into our drinking water system as a result of of the compost, originating from the compost site?
Thank you for the question and through the chair. So at this point, and through the testing that we've done, it's town staff as well as St. Lawrence Testing are of the opinion that there is no evidence to suggest that the town's drinking water is compromised from operations at the compost site. Like I'd mentioned before, we collected surface water samples back in March just to ensure that there wasn't any, from the spring runoff, from the freshet, if you will, snow melt, rain, all of that water, if you will, running over land and making its way into the adjacent creek system, crossing 43 and eventually making its way to the Rideau River, where obviously our intake is for our water plant on Abbott Street. So those water samples came back well within limits based on the criteria that it's being tested against. So that's why I say we can unequivocally say that we have no suspicions of any compromised operations at the site or any operations at the site that would compromise historically or currently today or presumably in the future that would compromise our water source.
Thank you. And in addition to that, we do testing at the water treatment plant for certain elements, I assume, and also PHCs. That's the right expression. The
Hydrocarbons?
Hydrocarbons, yes. Is that something we test for?
I'd have to come back to council
Okay.
on that one. There are certain things that, like metals, et cetera, perhaps, and PHCs are essentially, oil and fuel and diesel and all that kind of stuff. We have no indication that any of this is within our, coming from upstream, albeit it's possible, but you got to remember that those products those PHCs would typically, in my opinion, I'm not an expert on this, but you think about it, if you're out in your boat and you have a spill at the fuel docks, all of that floats on surface. Our intake within the Rideau River is below grade on very, very close to the river bottom. Right, so I think there'd be very little to no opportunity for PHCs to get into.
And I think from our annual reports we get from the water system, we test for certain heavy metals, and again, there's no existence of any presence there. Final question. This relates to, we had a local resident express some concern over this in a number of emails to me, and one was a suggestion or an accusation that there's contamination on site as a result of material removed from the Beckwith Street redevelopment and placed at the compost site. And as I understand it, that's not factual. In fact, the contractors we hired to do the work would have taken that material, didn't put it there. Can you confirm that, I guess?
Yeah, through the chair. Thank you for the question, Your Worship. Yeah, no, you're absolutely 100% correct. I was responsible for Beckwith Street Phase 2 during the start of my tenure here at the town. I facilitated contracted men on behalf of the town for that project. And I can 100% say that no material from Beckwith Street Phase 2 and or 1 was deposited out at the compost site at 3514 County Road 43.
So when the contractors were hired to do the job, they were also hired to remove the materials and,
Right.
and take it away.
And dispose of it. Sorry, didn't mean to cut
Okay.
you off. And dispose of it properly at an approved site.
Okay, and the other I guess it's just allegation that came up is that we have used recent materials to build the berms that align with some of the boundaries of the compost site. Do I understand those berms have been there for decades? I believe. I mean, I know there's trees growing out of them, so none of that material is obviously used for the berms. And do we know where the material came from that's been deposited along the perimeter to create the berms?
Yeah, again, through the chair, and thank you for the question. I can't for 100% certainty say it came from any one particular site in town. I think it's a culmination of different, I wouldn't necessarily say reconstruction projects over the years that have been facilitated here in the town. It's my opinion, based on talking with staff, and again, I think there's some history here for the town as well, that during smaller scale excavations if you think of, knock on wood, some of the water main breaks that we've had over the years, where we have surplus material from that excavation, it would have perhaps been taken out to the compost site to start to develop these burned areas. Now, keep in mind too that the regulation, the Ontario regulation for the handling of excess material came into force long after everything I just mentioned from history going back, a decade or more. So the rules now in terms of how excess soil is managed, there's a very stringent testing protocol that has to happen on site. and even prior to the project starting, where you have to get some baseline information data through your geotech work that you do before you tender and start a project. And then there's testing protocol throughout the project to determine how and where that material goes, and it has to be disposed of at a licensed site. That regulation, as I said before, is a little more fresh over the last couple of years. Certainly doesn't predate back to even going back half a decade.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the explanations.
Thank you. Nothing else? Councillor McGuire.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks for the update, Director McMahon. I'm wondering, this is a lot of information for a director's report. For this kind of stuff, I think I'd prefer if it was a staff report that we could read beforehand, come up with the questions, because it's just a lot to process right now, and I don't know that I fully captured everything that was presented to us in a way that I'd like for it. So maybe if we could get a written update or something and follow up, or if there's something that can be posted to the website for the public, if they don't have a chance to watch the meeting, or if they get parts of the meeting, because it just seems a lot more than what we usually get in director's reports.
Thank you. Any comment before I go to the next question? CEO Morris, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think the point that I'd like to emphasize is we've worked very closely with the regulator of these matters. Everything they've asked for, we've provided, and more. The regulator of these things are happy with what we're doing on the site, and I think the purpose tonight was to give assurances to council and the public that there is no threat emanating from the compost site, and we're going to monitor it to make sure that threat doesn't exist. In terms of a report, we could summarize Councillor McMahon's comments and put them in written form, perhaps as an information report at the next meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Director McMahon. Appreciate your report tonight. Okay, no other director reports?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. We have no committee of the whole consent reports. We do have two priority issues. The first one with, I assume Manager Grenke is speaking for Marie, thank you, on the heritage alteration permit application.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just bringing forward a report on behalf of our planning clerk and the Municipal Heritage Committee, recommending that Council passes a resolution under Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act, authorizing alterations to character-defining attributes on a designated property, in this case at 57 Chambers Street, locally known as the Abel Russell Ward House. So this stone house, one of the oldest in town, we believe was built in the 1830s, and it was originally designated heritage by council in 1983. So the 1983 designation bylaw was replaced in 2022 with a new heritage bylaw, replacing all of the bylaws and clearly defining the terms and what was identified as an important heritage attribute. So that 2022 change affected, I believe, 15 properties or privately owned properties, and was meant to incorporate some of the recent changes to the Heritage Act. The important thing about the bylaws is they more clearly spell out what is a heritage attribute, and the Act states that somebody cannot change or remove or replace a listed attribute unless council approves that. So under bylaw 10390-2022, the 3 columned porches are listed as heritage attributes. And while some of them are not original to the building, they're of a style and detail that forms part of the character as indicated in the bylaw. In this case, the owner began work replacing columns at the front and plans to do so as well on the sides and the rear. These columns, of course, some of them have been around for a while, and they do need repair. So once contact was made, the owner diligently and cooperatively worked with staff and the Municipal Heritage Committee. And before permission can be granted, an application and supporting details need to be provided, and the Municipal Heritage Committee would be consulted, and a recommendation provided to Council to inform Council's decision on a heritage alteration application. In this case, we had a pre-consultation with town staff and a couple of MHC members to discuss design options and learn. It's a great learning opportunity for for us as staff as well as the owner about the property. A great first step in the process, and that helped finalize the application that was received positively by the Municipal Heritage Committee. The Heritage Committee considered the alteration application and passed a resolution in support of it, and recommends that that council approves the alterations as noted in the report. So at this point, I'll seek council's direction on a potential authorization resolution.
Thank you, Manager Grunke. Any questions? I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up, and I would pass my thanks on. Oh, is your hand up, Councillor? Yes, Councillor McGuire.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd like to thank the owner when they were reached out to. They really went above and beyond to work with the committee, and I'd like to thank Dorothy, our committee chair, who met with the owner before, and the Heritage Committee for having an emergency meeting. Because our next regularly scheduled meeting isn't until tomorrow, and now hopefully it'll get approved tonight. So all this was able to happen before the next regularly scheduled meeting, because for the homeowner, they want to get the work done before winter. So I think good success story and a good example to show that having a heritage designation on a property doesn't impede work that happens there. And yeah, successful process all around. So thank you.
Well worded, Councillor. And so you have nods and thumbs up, Manager Grunke. Thanks very much. We'll move on to priority issue 9.2, the budget monitor report from Director Dober.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Council. As per our policy, I'm just bringing the July budget monitor just for the public, so the public's aware. The first budget monitor comes to council in June, and then monthly thereafter until the end of the year. So as of July, 7 out of 12 months is 58% of the way through the year. So that's kind of the factor that we're looking for with these various lines in the budget. I would point out that we're looking at this point of still coming out with a small amount under budget, and so at this point we're not seeing anything that's causing us great distress and worry at this point. But we are keeping a very close eye on things. Some of the lines have changed and some of the lines haven't, so I won't spend too much time on any of the lines that haven't changed. The first being the property taxes. We're still running at 98%. I would point out that the supplemental billings tend to run in Q3 and Q4. So we end up seeing a bit of revenue come in then. So I just want to point that out. Council may have noticed that both tax bills have gone out and we're running at 98%. So that's why there's a little bit of a variance there. Payments in lieu, we've seen some billings go in August. So the next month's report will include revenues from the PILs that have gone out. PILs stand for payment in lieu for the public. Those are the government-owned facilities that get taxed in a slightly different way, a methodology than our general property taxes. Operating grants and provincial offenses, that hasn't changed since last month. The biggest portion of that is our OMPF funding, Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, and that's the download from the province to municipalities. We receive it in 4 payments, so we've received 2 of the 4 payments, and I believe from their schedule, our next payment is due in August, so we should see that go up to the 75% mark next month. The other piece that comes in there is provincial offenses revenue, which runs about $46,000, and generally after year comes in December, so we likely won't see that be at 100% until we hit the end of the year. The mayor and council is running at 47%. A few lines are underutilized, like travel and public relations. So we should see that pick up later in the year. Community programs is 84%. That hasn't changed, so it's exactly the same as last month. Some of the amounts that we give out specifically for the Railway Museum and hospital contributions are fully utilized at 100%, and then a few small other items will be coming in the following months. Shared services at 58%. It's billed from the county. They bill on time, so we show that being right on track. Administration, just a touch below. I won't say too much about that. That's on track at 56% out of 58. IT services is at 45%, and that has to do with computer hardware purchase and computer maintenance. One thing I will point out is that that's going to be continually under budget until we get to the closer to the end of the year. The reason is that a lot of our equipment right now we're leasing, and that lease comes up in March of 2026. For the last 5 years, we've been leasing laptops and desktops, as well as monitors and docking stations that go with the laptops. So we're just touching base with our provider. We don't have any intention of leasing the monitors and the docking stations because they don't have the same kind of a lifespan as a computer. So therefore, we're kind of holding on to some of that hardware until we get to the end of the year. We know that there will be a couple monitors that need to be replaced and a couple of the docking stations, but we're going to hold on until towards the end of the year and just kind of make sure that we're keeping that budget a little bit closer to the hip and not buying things that are not absolutely necessary until we get a better sense of what we're going to need. And then we should see the lease line in 26 be adjusted according to the new leases, but also for a lesser amount of equipment. Library is running at 54%, which is pretty close to the 58%. So I've just regarded that as on track at this point. I had a look at the different lines from the library, and they look like they'll just be slightly under budget if they continue on with how they've been doing in the first 7 months. Transferred capital from operations, 58% on track. Police services is 54%. There's a couple lines that are underutilized, but they're managing their lines quite well. Fire services at 48%. Equipment repairs and hardware GLs are slightly underutilized, but we anticipate that to increase in the coming months. Bylaw, 55% on track, just a touch below. And community services, the administration is 33%. I've got that on track. There's a couple of reclassifications, mostly to do with insurance, that we discovered that needs to be done when we took a look at exactly why it was so low below the budget. And we're going to be doing that reclassification in August, so that should bring that number up closer to where we anticipate them being. Parks is 41%. There's a number of lines that haven't been utilized, and my apologies. There's 2 lines where it says June 30th, 2025. I apologize for that. I did not update that to July 31st, 2025. But the numbers are all correct. They are not June numbers, they are July numbers, so my apologies for that. The biggest in that line would be the shrubbery. Community facilities is at 82%. Right now, there's revenues are at 33%, property repairs are at 100%. So we had a look in the GL. We see $150,000 of revenues coming in August, and then the bulk of ice rentals are coming in Q4. We're estimating about $360,000 coming in for the rest of the year. So we should be able to manage those revenues. However, facility repairs and hydro will likely be over, and the insurance will slightly be over compared to budget, as they're after a couple of the insurance lines will be over budget slightly. The reason for that is we had the budget passed and approved before we got the information of our fire, and as a result of the fire, we did have a slight increase in our insurance premiums. So across the board, we're going to see just a little bit being over. So that is one thing to let council be aware of. Hillcrest Cemetery, 37%. Equipment, property, and monument repairs are underutilized. And the daycare, this is lowered slightly from July because we were front-ended a large portion of the revenues from the province and from the county. Crossing guards is at 65%. We're estimated 60% of the expenses should be recognized at this point. So we're a little bit over, but we're not anticipating that it's going to be over at the end of the year. Special events, 138,000 out of 98. The Director of Corporate Services is going to be coming forward with a report. There are a few more small expenses to come, but there's a fair amount of revenue that's to come. And as Stephanie will come and report later on, that both of those events ran within budget or very close to budget. So don't let that number alarm you at this point. It's just a timing issue before we receive those revenues in. Economic development, 53%. Just a couple lines were slightly underutilized, and tourism at 51%. Visitor center operations and public arts initiatives were underutilized at this point of the year. Small Business Advisory Center is the same as the CDC. They got front-ended some of their revenues, and we should see that even out by the end of the year. Heritage House is on track based on their expenses. However, I hope I get this right, Canadian Museum Ontario grant and Trillium grants will be coming shortly. We've expensed the portions that would be related to those grants, but the grants haven't been received yet. So once we receive those grants, it will show that Heritage House is on track as far as their spending and the operations, the expenses related to the operations of that organization. Downtown Business Association, of course, as per normal, collects their full levy, and there's an adjustment below that we'll touch on later. Planning's at 48%, very similar to June, and it's related to the CIP expenses not being utilized. Conservation Authority is fully complete. And building inspections, right now it's 112,000 with a budget of 0. There's been more expenses than revenues. As of July 31st, and which this is the second line that should have read July 31st, my apologies. 24% of the projected revenues have been collected. There's not a lot of activity going on, as Council may be very well aware. We have the capacity within that budget. If the expenses are higher than the revenues, we have the building reserve, which has been accumulated specifically for this purpose. So throughout the last couple of years, there's been more revenues collected than there has been expenses. Therefore, it's gone into the building reserve because it's a revenue neutral department. So we have funds to draw on should the expenses be higher than the revenues. But of course, we wait until the end of the year and make sure everything is in there before we actually move those funds from the revenues over into the operating. Public Works, 53%. It's pretty close, but there's some more expenses, and I apologize, this got cut off somehow with the agenda that went out. I should have read more expenses related to summer work anticipated to be received in the remainder of Q3 and into Q4. So that department is on track at this point. Engineering is on track due to the cyclical nature of this department. Again, this one got cut off. I apologize for that. More expenses are realized during the building season, which starts in early spring, and we're coming up towards the end of it. And this should taper off after August, as per information related from the engineering department. Environmental services at 54%. Seasonal GL line is underutilized. There's a couple lines that are underutilized, but for the most part, they're on track. They're pretty close. And the airport is showing below. Again, it's the same thing as last time. The paving, crack sealing will be completed in the fall. I believe it's scheduled for September, if memory serves correct. Utilities are the same as last month in that the revenues and the collection are cyclical and they're behind. We bill at the end of the period, but the expenses are realized to operate that system up front. I think Council may remember in the past year, through all that reporting, that there was always that delay. So every time we reported on a monthly basis, it looked like the department was going to be over because we're experiencing expenses quicker than we're experiencing the revenues or recognizing the revenues. So there's not a concern there that we're going to end up in that position at the year end once the revenues catch up with the expenses. Once the property tax is adjusted to 7 months as well as the DVA, we have a small surplus that we're projecting at this point. Be happy to
Thank you.
take any questions.
Thank you, Director. Looking to my colleagues to see if there's questions or comments.
Good.
I just have one question, and it may be self-explanatory, but about the tourism budget. So I'm looking at you, CAO Morris, and it looks like we're underspent, but the tourism season's almost over. So I'm just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Thanks for the question. So we have a number of events that probably haven't been fully expensed.
Okay.
My understanding is we'll be tracking close to budget at year end.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you through the chair. If I could just add to that, these numbers are as of the end of July, so they don't include any expenses that were incurred in August. I plan on coming back quicker with the August budget monitor, which should show that what Director Morris said is on track.
Thanks for your report.
Sorry, CAO Morris.
Oh, one more. Oh, Councillor McGuire, you need to put your hand closer to your face. Your screen is small. Sorry. That's better. Go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Sorry. I'm wondering, I'm not seeing a ton of changes between June and July. And I know that these are a lot of work to put together and you're a busy guy. So I'm wondering, not that I can see the horseshoe right now, but what if we did these quarterly instead of monthly? Would that save time and energy and maybe give us a little bit more data in between the times that we look at it at Committee of the Whole?
Councillor McKenna?
Thank you. I know we asked for this, and I think I'd like to finish my opinion would be finish the year out and then look back and say, was it too much or too little?
Okay. Lots of nodding to that suggestion.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll finish the year out. Thanks for the idea, Councillor McGuire. Anything further? Okay. Oh, CAO Morris?
Yeah, thank you. So just a bit of insight. So the Treasurer and Finance Department put this information together for all the department heads to review, so they're monitoring. So I appreciate the acknowledgement that it is a lot of work. It's arguably work that we'll be doing anyway. But if there was an appetite to streamline the presentations of the information, we could certainly do that. But assembling the information, I think, is something that the Treasurer does, and the department heads rely on that information to keep on track and make adjustments if necessary.
Councillor McKenna?
Just to complement the transparency of what we're doing here and to the public, like it's like right down to the dollar, and you can find out where the money's going and how we're doing, and see the questions from council. So I like the process. Sure, we could shorten it up if you want.
Councillor
No,
Brennan?
excuse me, I appreciate the detail, and it takes you 15 minutes, so thank you.
Sounds like status quo. Thank you very much. Appreciate your work. Okay, we are going to move into an in-camera session. If I could have a motion by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Quinn, that we move into an in-camera session at 6:03 p.m. All in favor? Carried. We'll be back shortly.
Nice, really nice.
resolution, was it? The first time last time?
as it doesn't start, Thank you for your patience. For our Rise and report, we heard about a personal issue about identifiable individuals and provided direction. Do we have any committee, board, or external organization updates? Okay, seeing none. We do have a correspondence item on the activities of her group out of Halton. And I was wondering if I could just say something about that. Thank you. So I looked this group up and I was really impressed. And I know that as counselors, we all have experienced toxicity and negativity in our council work. And as a female, I know there can be a different level of abuse that we sometimes take. And so when I think about when I did run the first time and an email that I received, it makes me hesitant about running again. And so I think it's really important that we acknowledge the work that's coming out of Halton. And I want women to run. I want a diverse group of candidates. And I want to make sure we're doing everything we can to make it safe for them to do so. So I would just put forward that we support this campaign and encourage all of you to stand side by side on this. Perfect.
For sure.
Thank you.
How would we support it, Madam Chair?
I was thinking we could send a letter of support to the group.
Be a supporting resolution and be on the
Yeah.
consent agenda.
Put it on a council.
Very much like that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we have no notice of motions. We have a motion for adjournment with Councillor Robinson that the committee adjourn its proceedings at 6:35 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called committee meeting. All in favor? Carried. We are adjourned.